and you can find one of these like internationals, you know? Yeah. So I went to one of those clubs, and what was playing on the speakers? On the Rivers of Babylon. Yeah? Who's that by? Anyone know? Billy Joel. Yeah, Billy Joel. I'm old. So Billy Joel was playing, but it was like a remix or something, like a disco version or a nightclub version. Yeah, it was like a remix of Billy Joel's song. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm Jewish. Like, what, you know, I knew that much, you know, that was a significant Jewish song, a Jewish concept from Psalms. And so that really affected me on an inner level, that I was suddenly experiencing a Jewish moment in a nightclub like that. And I had a bunch of those. Like, I remember my ex-girlfriend, I call her my ex because she was probably the only girl I really was serious with before my wife. And my wife knows who she is and hates her, obviously, because they had some interactions because I was still sort of at the end story when I first met my wife. And she was in a nightclub with me in this Spanish island, and we've got loads of stories about that one. And she was singing a song, "You're free, gotta do what you got to do, got to live your life." It was like a big song in the 90s. And be what you got to be. And I suddenly felt like God was speaking through her, telling me that I'm better than this. I've got to live a better life than this. This is not my life. And it literally woke me up. It was scary how spiritually overwhelmed I felt in such a dark place.
So, do you think...
And no one brainwashed me to get like this. Like no one was feeding me Judaism.
It might sound like a foolish question, just to think about that. Like it probably is a foolish question, but like, were you sober at those times?
Yeah, no. That night probably I drank quite a bit, I reckon. Had a few times.
Influence over the spiritual aspect?
Look, there's definitely, I would say all the drugs and alcohol I did were tools to help. By the way, whoever leaves, there will be a recording or whatever, you can listen. Yeah, you mentioned. Have a good one. Thanks for being here. So that's El Neshama or something? What's his name? Yeah. Oh, there's some guy there. Oh, that was cool. Good name. Anyway, so what was I saying? To get back to the flow. So
drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. So I would, once again, I said no regrets. So I needed that time of drugs and alcohol at that time of my life to get me out of the, you know, I don't know if you know the radio song OK Computer, but like, you know, 9 to 5 in the gym, like robot style lifestyle. I needed something to break me out and make me think a little bit out of the box, open me up to the soul a little bit. But would I say everyone needs to do that to get spiritual? No. But for me, at that time of my life, I was so like boxed into a London, Northwest sort of lifestyle where you do this and it's all like written out for you, that I needed some way to sort of escape it. And the alcohol and the drugs was like a stepping stone. I wouldn't say it was necessary for everyone, but for me at that time, it gave me a sensitivity to think and be more creative and think a little bit out of the box, so that once I came to Israel, I actually quit from all of it. Because I felt such a creative energy here, I didn't need that anymore.
Do you think having a relationship with God helps your relationship with your wife?
Yeah, for sure. Like, my friends back then said, he's either going to be a gangster or some religious fanatic. That was like the joke, yeah? Like, I was running a nightclub who actually were owned by gangsters, yeah? So I just had that mentality that was a bit more like overly networking, overly in the business, overly... And so it had to be focused, and the only way I could get grounded was a higher power, as they say. Like the whole 12 steps thing. The only way you can control these addictions is through a higher power. You need a higher power to ground you, to make you realize you're not enslaved to all these drives. So you don't have to always, so to be a loyal husband, I needed a higher power to remind me that I have a commitment to that. And that relationship with God is, and it's also on a deep level, relationship with God, relationship with wife, relationship, it's all connected. It all becomes one.
Question.
Yeah, what do you want to say? That was a good question. Yeah.
Was your wife religious?
My wife grew up South Africa, and if you know South Africans, because some of you guys are, they're very traditional. I don't know what it's like now, but she went to Herzliya, for example, and she got a very Jewish education. She was way ahead of me in that sense. She knew how to read Hebrew properly, and she was way ahead of like in traditions and understanding values. Like they were more like not too far off from their European ancestors who had a lot of traditions, whereas my family, more generations in London, had already given up a lot of any connection to Judaism, and you know they got involved with reform already, whereas in South Africa there wasn't really reform, and you know it was much more traditional. So she actually really bloomed, like she really flowered when she got involved with Jewish stuff at school. Like, there was a famous Rebbetzin back then who came to visit, and being in JFS, she went to a Jewish school. I went to a public school. So it was a very different. So she had all those Jewish experiences I hadn't. And so her teachers always felt like she was going to become more, she always had that potential. And she really pushed me when we became one to really go down the more very religious. We were like very religious at one point in our journey, like in the external sense. And now we feel like we've really done tshuva on the tshuva. Like you have to now balance out, like our friend here asked before, the past with the future, with the present, get everything more organic and together. And that's where I feel like we're at now.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You said that you kind of came to the decision, like by yourself,
Yeah,
that you wanted to become more religious and kind of leave the rest of it behind.
sure.
Did you all, anyone in your family, your parents, like influence you in a way?
My family were more against it. Huh?
Can I go to the toilet real quick?
You sure? You can do whatever you need, man. You're good. Please come back.
Yeah.
The idea of my family, they were against it. Like, they were brought up with like the English sort of cynicalism. They're like the rabbinate are corrupt, and they just want power, that kind of headspace. So Judaism was presented to me as some sort of like snoring rabbi experience. So I had to really work on myself to believe in myself when my own parents weren't supportive initially. They still have issues with it, but they see a lot of the good that's come out of it. It's grounded me. I've got beautiful children. Like I'm very focused. My son's a hero in Israel, which he wouldn't be if he grew up in London. There's a lot of pluses. Yeah.
When you were 18, 19, you came to Israel. What did you do? Were you on a program?
Yeah. So I came. At first, I came by myself, just like hippie style. Ended up in Tzfat, smoked a lot of weed initially. And that was actually a big change point, because I didn't hook up with women, which was a miracle back then. I just didn't. I'll show some pictures from then, you'll see why it was. Girls were interested, but I just didn't. And no, I just didn't. But I did smoke a lot. But then someone challenged me and said, you can get high without the smoking, without the women, and without the need to connect to everyone, like drive around. You can have Shabbat. You can get high off Shabbat. So that was, once I experienced that really blew me away. That was in Tzfat. When I came to Yerushalayim, I had a lot of very powerful experiences in Jerusalem, by the Kotel, with other people around. And then when I ended up by back in London working in a factory for my father's factory, and that was really not spiritual, but there was a Jewish program nearby called the JLE. I started going there, and their whole thing was to push me to come back to Israel and go to Awesome Air, which was like this Baal Tshuva yeshiva in Jerusalem. And I don't know, you have it in South Africa called Awesome Students or something? It's connected. Yeah, you have also Awesome Air, you have also Awesome as well. So whatever the new version of it is for young guys. So I ended up like with that experience, yeshiva experience. But I part of me wanted to go to Chabad, part of me wanted to like just float around. But I ended up there because my wife's twin brother went there. And we were very close, and I connected to some rabbis, some souls there in a deeper way than I was with other places. And they became very, big part of my life. And my wife went to a seminary which was similar to that, called Neve. So it's like they sort of go together. So it was like we ended up in the right place, the right time, with the right people, and it helped me get to that point where then I could go on this spiritual journey with her. And we were somewhat at the same space. That's also very important. You're sharing the journey somewhat with the person you're with. There should be some common ground in terms of your spiritual journey as well. We bonded in that way. Yeah.
Based on what your past sounded like, I'm sure you had a lot of female friends when you just started to go on the path to looking someone you love, find your soulmates in that sense.
They were still around, some of those girls. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on maintaining a very close relationship with the female while you're married or in a serious relationship?
So what happened was, to me, like, for me, it was a lot of those relationships were sexual. So to just, like, what was unusual about my wife was it wasn't. That was the unique thing. I was like bonding with this person, and she was actually upset about it. Like, one of the stories was we went to see Titanic, Now, Titanic's like a romance. So I went there, and I was sitting next to them. I had all these boys behind who we used to actually have fights with, funny enough, all sitting there behind going, like sticking their tongues out, like, pretending like we're going to kiss or something. And we actually didn't. And when I went back, drop her off at her house, like people were like, wow, these two look really good together. I dropped her off, and I wrote item. And I went to get the seatbelt to help her get out, because it got stuck. She thought that was the moment, and I said, I'm just getting the seatbelt. And she wrote that in her diary, I actually saw it once. Just getting the seatbelt, that was the line, just getting the seatbelt. Because why didn't I move in on it? Something was stopping me, I just felt like I needed to have more of a connection with her than just the physical. I'd done that already. And all the girls I'd been physical with, it didn't feel like it was that deep. It was more that they were pretty or whatever. And when I came here, so there was situations where they did reconnect, but like one or two older friends, like role models of mine, at that time were like, better to stay away. I'll bring them, I'll open them up to this beautiful path that I'm on, and they were like, you're not going to do that. You're going to end up falling. It's not going to work. So for me, it wasn't that, because I was a very sexually active guy, probably wasn't wise for me to do. Like I once worked in a rehab and in Israel called Retorna, and I worked a lot with the guys, and once in a while they made me work with the women, and I just felt like this isn't my thing. Like generally my focus has always been, I've worked in many programs over the years, guys. Girls not my, I have my boundaries there. That's me personally, you have to know yourself, Like, not that I'm going to jump on anyone and do something crazy, but just, you have to know yourself. And generally my success has been like with the young men, not so much with the young women. And that includes my old girlfriends. I mean, I'm very close with my boys. I went back to one of their weddings, and at the end of the wedding, everyone was drunk. It was in London, and even one of my famous family members was there, a guy called Harvey Goldsmith. And this ginger girl that I was never really into, but she was into me, came up to me and said, come on, let's dance. She wanted to I said, look, I've got a wife, I think then I had 5 kids, waiting for me back home in Jerusalem, it's not happening, it's just not happening. No one would have cared there, because it was a secular crowd, no one would have cared. But I was not having my boundaries, and I didn't dance, and I feel good about it. Then afterwards I went back to my friend's place, who was living in Marylebone, and it's a fancy part of London, and I said to him, bro, we played a game of chess. I said, if I win, you get rid of the non-Jewish girlfriend. And he's a clever guy, good at chess. But God was on my side, I beat him. Years later, I went to meet with him in another place, he flew me in, and I put the filling on him, and we had a whole fight about the non-Jewish girlfriend. And Baruch Hashem now, all these years later, about 4 years or so, I got involved in his wedding, and it was a beautiful Jewish wedding, and a beautiful Jewish wife, and he just had a Jewish baby. I invested in my relationships with my friends, and thank God, they're Jewish-wise, they're alive, all of them, thank God. Yeah.
You've had quite a few relationships. How do you know when you found the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with? What that kind of shifts? How do you...
Were you there when I mentioned the park situation? And I felt that with the guitar, and she was writing poetry.
Sorry, I came a little later.
Yeah, so I was talking about it. It was this moment of... It's a good question, but I did sort of cover it, but maybe I need to clarify it. It was a moment of deep clarity, where I felt like we'd had a previous life experience. There was something about this person that was much deeper than any other person I've ever encountered, like a soul moment. You have to be a little bit open for it to experience that, but it does happen. I don't know if you've ever had that, where you meet someone, and in your trip to Israel, you met someone on this trip who you just really bonded. You could just talk, you could just connect, there's so much common ground. So when you have this with a lady, and she's not irritating, she's actually deep, you actually want to talk more. Because I don't mean to be rude, but sometimes women, that's another thing. I always tell my kids, I got a bunch of teenager boys, they're all good looking, in my opinion, So, the girls, they hit them up, on IG or whatever. One of them, thank God, got off IG because of it. And one of my boys, he said he's already found the girl that he's interested in. He's 16, he just flew himself to Poland and Ukraine. He works, he has his own job, and he's a manager of a store, and he flew himself off. He's there now. He's in the Ukraine. He's going to be there for Shavuot, and he's already said he's found the girl that he's he's just waiting. Like he's not. I'm not ready. She's not ready. Yeah. His brothers are a bit big. Just to wait till like he's at a place where it's ready to see if it's. And until then, he's not interested. And in any other one. And the other boy himself, like the one who's is a bit maybe more likely to do that kind of thing. We've hit up with girls. So I said to him, just want to let you know how irritating a woman can be if she's not the one. I don't know if you've had that experience. Don't mean to be rude about women, but you get.
They just
Yeah, and they need, and they this and that. Now, if it's your wife, if it's your soulmate, there's all these pluses as well. But now you're probably not getting much. Yeah. By the way, secular people, it's good to know this. Good percentage. Most secular people don't get much. Just you should know from their marriage. That's one of the reasons why most of them are breaking up these days. I mean, apparently the percentages are like once every 6 months. Imagine you're married to this woman. I'm not joking. Go look it up. Most secular people now hardly having any sex with their wife. At a certain point, it just stops happening. So then, what happens? Divorce, or they cheat, or this and that. The marriage it's not bonding. They're not bonding. They're not going on this journey I mentioned before. Whereas in a kosher Jewish marriage, you're minimum 2 times a week probably, based on the way the schedule is with mikveh and everything else, and and then 4 times a month at least. And then at the beginning, and when there's energy, it could be more. And and then as you get to a point where you don't need to only connect intimately to connect. It could be just a touch. It could be just a look in the eyes. It could be a very deep conversation. And it does all the stuff that intimacy supposedly does. You start to understand intimacy isn't just the act of sex. It's actual an emotional bonding, which is apparently 90% of the whole connection. 10% is physical. And now, at the soul level, the spiritual aspects, which the therapists aren't going to talk about so much, but the idea you have a spiritual connection, that's also a huge part, where you feel like it's a bonding experience. I have a podcast, Relationship Flow. You have to create a whole experience for it to really grow and to become something that you want to do and she wants to do, and you're in the mood, and you're going to make time for it, and it's special. Unlike that world, after a certain point, people are just finding other ways to be stimulated. Yeah. So that's really sad out there. I feel sorry for those husbands and men, for those women who are not really bonding anymore. So I knew that you're getting the best out of relationships between man and wife through doing it the right way and understanding the depth of it. There's Kabbalah, there's mysticism, there's deep aspects to it's holy, it's the highest thing, it's the highest way of unification, it's the highest way of unifying with another human being. And we know that reality is it's the most challenged part of human reality. Any more questions before we end off? Got a few more minutes. Come on, you guys are really making it easy.
About
No, ask. I want to hear the most crazy.
I was just thinking about having sex twice a week when you're married.
So that's the Torah, Friday night, mikveh, if you want to get into the religion aspect, there's a whole religious side to it, yeah? You go to the purification process, and so the night of the purification process, the mikveh night, and then there's the Shabbat night, and then, the idea you shouldn't overdo it, and just reality is a woman, has a lot of hormones, a lot of interest, the beginning part, and then the second week she's already starting to feel hormonal and not be so in the mood anyway. Remember, a woman, that's another thing, you have to study women a little bit, their process. They're not just like the way the movies make. They're always up for it. They always look great and they're always up for it. They wake up in the morning, perfect, yeah? And they're in the mood, always. That's how the movies make. So there's no such reality. That's either a prostitute or a porn star. There's no such reality. Yeah? And even she's going to have a limit, yeah, because there's only so much. So the point is, there's no such reality. A woman is a process. You have to get to know their cycle, their flow, their emotional state. It's a process. That's why I say when it's in marriage, you can start to work it out. But when it's just hitting up a woman, you're not going to know what's going on if you're not in a real relationship. You're just going to be confused half the time. Why is she in such a bad mood? Why is she so not responsive? I don't get it. We were so physical, now she just wants distance. I don't get it. All this confusion that goes on. Yeah, what do you want to ask? You want to ask something? Someone want to ask?
No.
Questions? I want more questions.
So what do you think keeps that spark alive in religious families? looking at, like in contrast to a secular marriage, you know.
Not all religious families are getting it out, right?
No, I'm sure. But let me say if you look at the statistics, I'm sure the religious marriage would probably be getting more action than.
It's not just action, like bonding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bonding more on that spiritual level and physical level than the secular family. What do you think really is it?
Well, look, if you're not bringing Netflix to the bedroom, that's already a head start. Yeah, because you know.
Right.
Yeah, you've got times of disconnecting to reconnect. That's the famous concept of Shabbat. Even though anyone out there in high tech really needs to do this, anyone in the big business world needs to just disconnect to reconnect, needs to just turn off. I was with a secular guy from Tel Aviv this last week, a big high up business guy, and he said to me, I'm not religious, but Shabbat I disconnect to reconnect. I mean, he first said disconnect. So I said, and why did you disconnect? To reconnect. I added to that point. And he said, you're right, reconnect to my wife, to my kids, my grandchildren. Like, he's an older guy, and he knows the importance of it, even not being religious and not being, you know, interested in the laws of Shabbat. But the concept, he gets it. And that's so too with a woman. Yeah, you didn't ask any questions, man.
I'm sorry.
Ask one question. Then you can go. Huh?
How are you?
How am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this. I'd love to come back and do this again, but you guys
I know
thought
we
it's a
love
one-time
you.
thing.
We'll love you back.
We're allowed.
Oh yeah, you can ask. Ask Shmulafly. You know Shmulafly? He's the guy who organizes this. You want to thank anyone? Thanks for coming. That's a good question.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Could you say those stories that happened in Spain?
Of course. We'll end off with the Spain story. I did do one when you're free, you got to live. You got to do. So there was another story. This story I don't tell everyone. I went into a club, and I was on the rebound from this relationship, and she'd already was starting to hook up with some other dude, yeah? And while we were still connected, and by that point I'd already met my wife to be, so I was getting things were shifting. And the guy she'd always wanted, she'd hooked up with. In fact, she'd hooked up with him already in front of me at another crazy nightclub in London in a dress that I just bought her, very expensive dress, and I just met all her family. And she, in front of me, I mean, I was very busy with my boys and the slot machines, so while I turned my back, she was off with this dude, yeah? And I even drove her home, that's how crazy I was. So the next story, I was in Spain, and all his boys were there, yeah? He wasn't there, but, you know, being the boys up, same thing, yeah? So I was and I had like the drink and the feeling like I could do it. They were older than me, so it was a bit, you know, they were tougher guys, but I was gonna do it. But I thought, you know what, she was there with his boys, yeah? And my ex. So I saw this girl there, and I call them club women, club girls. I don't know what the name is in the street name, because it's been so long. But they're the women of the clubs. Like the women the clubs bring these kind of women,
Promoters.
finance them, promote them to promote the club. And they're like all done up to the nines, as they say, and you know, they've got, you know, everything, the extensions, everything. And that one of those women, I was like, you know, I started hitting on her, but drink this, that. Anyway, I was trying to do it to make my ex jealous, yeah? So it didn't work so much, but there was a bit of ruckus between us and the boys. You know, we ended up leaving it. My own boys were good boys. They were like, let's just get out of here and have a good time. Let's enjoy this holiday, forget her. It's not wasted time, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, later on, I'm walking around the town. I've lost all my boys. I don't even know. So I just come to this place. I'm drunk off my head. I don't know where I'm at. So I walk into a cafe, and the girl from the club girl was sitting there. And she liked me. She liked my vibe back then. She come sit down. So I sat down, you know, we started talking, and then, you know, it was going on another like hour or so, and then she's going to come back to my place. And I was like, oh, you know, 2 a.m, let's go. So I come back to her place, I get there, she starts taking off all this stuff. Because remember, she dressed like extensions, and I'm getting a little bit freaky. She's not as tall as she looks suddenly, you know. No. Yeah. Thank God, before those days, where generally those things would happen. Thank God. Thank you. I never had that experience, thank God. So that would be more like 2024 experience, you know. That you really nowadays just go from that kind of shock. Anyway, but no, but you need protection because you don't know. So like, anyway, so like, I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of the women out there. They look like the hottest women with, you know, and below is completely not. So anyway, so she took it all off, and then she said, come, sleep. So come. So I come, and we start talking. She says to me, like, by the end of all the talking, she's like, because obviously she had a lot of trauma from her past relationships in Wales or wherever she was from, and all the different things she was going through. And all I cared about was this previous relationship. And I got to a point where I just felt like, once again, as I said in university, if it wasn't the real thing, I can't go through this pain I was going through for this ex. The fire, like it says, we'll add in a bit of Torah here, Ish for Isha. Ish for Isha is a man and woman in Hebrew. It has in it the same letters as Aish, as fire. Yeah, both Ish and Isha, both have fire. What's the two letters that's the difference between the woman and man? A Yud and a Hey. Yud and Hey together make what? God, Shechina. Yikah, yeah, how do you want to say it? Yeah? So Yud and K to come together make God's name. We want to unite God's name in this world. We want to be light to the world. So when Ish and Isha come together, if they've got God's blessing, if they're together with on a soul level, there's a unification going on. So then it has the fire gets the energy. That fire elevates relationship. What I experienced from that ex was how much that fire burnt. I felt the burn. I don't know if you've ever broken up with a girl who you really like. It's a burn. It's fire. Fire gone wrong. Divorces, they're like fire. Fire's in the house. But they hate each other. Passion, most divorces. Yeah? They end up trying to destroy each other. It's like this burning fire, consuming fire. Instead of what? The fire's contained, controlled, channeled, and it's passionate, it's great, it lights up the home, it brings warmth, it brings souls, it brings more souls to the world, it brings light to the world. You can now, as a unit, do so much more. That's Ish for Isha with a unit of K. That's with God's blessing. So that was the contrast with the Spanish experience, the Spanish island experience, because she was not getting that from her lifestyle, obviously, and I wasn't getting it from my ex. So all we did was just bond. How we both, and she asked me, cuddle me. I didn't do anything else than cuddle her. So when I went back to my boys after that night, they were all like, oh, like 3, 4 in the morning, 4, 5 in the morning late. I didn't stay there. I didn't have sleep in it. I just left after an hour, cuddling over. And they were like, oh, yeah, well, yeah, you were just, we saw who you were with, And I was like, no, nothing happened, man, nothing. I'm still working out this ex story. I just, not where I'm at. And that's gradually what helped me open up to a more spiritual relationship, understanding that fire. I just didn't want to have that negative experience of seemingly at the beginning all this passion, but now it turns into fire gone wrong. And that for me was a big wake-up call. So I'm happy to come back and do a bit more, because we really only touched, I did 20 sessions with the previous group. That's up to you guys, let Shmuel fly. I don't know how much more time you're here. But I really appreciated the attendance. I appreciated the listening, the questions. I hope the answers were helpful. And I know that by discussing this kind of stuff, because it's very real, we didn't even get into the whole sex thing and phone stuff that goes on. And, we didn't even get into that. Like the way the phones have such an impact in our relationships, the lack of focus, the status, the fakeness. We didn't even get into that. Like the whole phone experience, with women nowadays. Because it is a whole nother level that you guys have to deal with. I didn't have to deal with back then. And, that, just understand anything you're tested in, if your test is that much harder to really come out with a good relationship, you actually, if you can get it right, and even if you don't get it right completely, but at least trying, that's a big accomplishment also. And that's how God looks at us in this generation. He's really looking for us, really trying hard to just get that relationship right. He sees how our intentions and our will, our inner will is to do the right thing by our own way of dealing with this process, with how every time we hold back from not watching porn or not texting that girl that we shouldn't, or not hooking up when we shouldn't, every time we hold back a little bit, and then when we please God find the right person and really dedicate ourselves, to really dedicate, and not to end up as another statistic of divorce and single parent families and all that stuff that's going on. And it takes a lot of work, and it's worth it. This is something worth investing in, and that's why it's important to have these kind of conversations, because it will lead you guys to have intimacy that will be focused and quality. That's it. Okay, much love. Come again, as they say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your time here, guys.
Can we see some photos of the